Morning. How are we all doing? Great. I have an image up here we're going to stick up really quick. Any minute. It's coming, I can feel it. Here it comes. 3, 2, 1. Nope, that's not the one. It's coming. It's coming. And so anyway, how are you guys doing? How are you doing? What's going on in your life? Enough about me. Let's talk about you. There it is. Okay. Now that we have it, what in the world is it? Now, if you know what it is, don't yell it out. Don't ruin it for everyone else who's not as quick as you are. What are we looking at? Just think about it to yourself. It's obviously I really zoomed in. Do you figure it out? You're looking at a needle and thread at a microscopic level. Okay, next picture. What are we looking at? Some kind of body cell, maybe. Bacteria. You figured it out? That's a guitar string. Pretty cool. Next image. This one's a little bit easier, I think. Okay, I told you not to yell it out. Come on. Yeah, that's a strawberry. Interesting, huh? Those are the seeds. Next image. What are we looking at? Any ideas? You guys are looking at a microscopic image of salt and pepper. It's pretty neat. Okay, next. Now, what is that? Somebody knows. I'll give you guys another minute. Did somebody say a Fruit Loop? Because that's not what it is. I don't know what kind of Fruit Loops you're eating, but that's Velcro. Cool stuff, huh? You know, what's interesting, and you can go ahead and take the images off there. What's interesting is when you're looking at really everyday things, if you zoom into them really, really close, you can't really tell what the heck's going on, right? Really, it's anything. I mean, this is stuff that we have contact with daily. But you zoom in that close, and it's pretty difficult to tell what the heck's going on. Because we're used to seeing the whole thing, right? We're used to seeing the whole object right in front of us. And there's the strawberry, and there's the whole strawberry. Okay, there's Velcro, and there's the whole thing. I see it all. It's hard to figure out what's going on when we don't have the whole picture, when we're zoomed in really close. So the title of our message today, as we have up there, is 10,000 Feet, Getting Perspective Right. Because when we're talking about this, we're taking some time this week to talk about this, because as I think we've just seen, perspective is everything. How close you're looking, how big your picture is, it's everything. And not just talking about physical objects, not just talking about things that you're looking at physically, but the perspective that we have for our jobs, for our relationships, for our families, for our past, the perspective we have for our future, for our present situations, and I guess for our life in general. The perspective that we have for these things shapes how we live in a really significant way. It shapes how we live. Because when I'm talking about perspective, I'm talking about that thing that's how we interpret everything that goes on around us. It's the things that we focus on, how we interpret what happens around us and what happens to us. And depending on what we're focused upon and how we interpret the things that happen around us, it's going to shape how we act, the choices we make. It's going to shape even as far as things like our mood and our happiness, our satisfaction, our well-being in general. Depending on where your perspective is, you can be literally a healthy person or a very unhealthy person. This is actually, modern psychology has done case studies over and over and over again that have all proven repeatedly that where you keep your perspective and having a good perspective, whatever that means, is one of the biggest contributing factors towards managing depression, towards mental and even physical health, depending on where your perspective is. It's interesting, huh? But I don't think any of us doubt this too much. I think we all understand, at least to some level or another, the importance of our perspective. And really, I mean, in whatever arena you're in, there's no doubt that finding and maintaining a good perspective is, it's important. It's important to life. And not just as a Christian, not just us in this room, but as a human being in general. It seems to be hard-coded into us that we need to maintain a good perspective or things are going to get really tough. But here's the trick, and there's always a trick. Here's the catch. We human beings in modern day America, we have an extremely strong tendency to have a small perspective. Very small perspective. And we're taught this. We're taught to constantly focus on what is right in front of us. What is right there. What is happening around us right now. What is happening to us right now. How it's affecting us right now. How we feel right now. What we want right now. And that's what's in front of you. And that's what you deal with. That's the important stuff right now. And everything else, we'll figure that out later. And this is taught, this is encouraged, okay? You focus on what's right in front of you, and this is what you do, how it's affecting you now, what you want now. You've got to live for today, okay? Live for the moment. And this is why we have a culture that is, you guys you're all familiar with the term instant gratification, right? Now, we love our instant gratification, don't we? And of course, we live in a culture in which it's extremely easy to gratify ourselves instantly in almost every area of life, because it's all around us. We have some means of grabbing what we want. But yeah, if we find something we need, well, it's in the now, and that's what I want right now, and that's what I care about right now, so that's what I'm going to get right now, and that's instant gratification. And it's actually really unfortunate. We don't really question it, but it's really unfortunate that we do this, because I think as we saw just a moment ago with those pictures zoomed in to a microscopic level, when our perspective is small, we miss the big picture. When our perspective is focused in on the small things, we miss what's really happening all around us. And by doing that, we cut off our connection with reality. In other words, what I'm saying is, by having a small perspective, we are creating a rift, a break between what we think is going on and what is actually going on. The way we think things are and the way things actually are. Because you're zoomed in this close, what you see is some kind of weird-looking stringy thing. It's just a guitar string. We break our connection with reality. For instance, I'll give you an example here. How many of you have known somebody who is convinced that they're doing totally fine? That life is good, they're doing all right. Hey, you know what? Surely, there might be some problems here or there, but you know what? Compared to everyone else, I'm doing really, really good. I'm going in the right direction. Things are going well. When in reality, and everyone around them can see this, they are heading really quick towards disaster. You ever known someone like that? Things are good, and no matter what you tell them, they can't really register. They won't hear it. Hey, you really need to stop what you're doing. No, things are good. I'm doing all right. You guys ever heard of a movie called Planes, Trains, and Automobiles? Yeah. It's a movie with an old movie with John Candy and Steve Martin. And I'll show you a clip here in a second. They're on a road trip. That's most of the movie. They're on a road trip to get back home. And there comes one point where they're both looking down while they're driving, and they end up on the opposite side of the highway, going against traffic. So let's watch the clip.
Hey! Hey!
Hey, what's going on?
Some joker wants to race.
Race? That's ridiculous.
All right, come on, let's go. Let's go.
Put your window down!
You want something?
He's probably drunk.
You're going the wrong way! What? You're going the wrong way!
He says we're going the wrong way.
Oh, he's drunk. How would he know where we're going?
Yeah, how would he know? Thank you. Thanks a lot. Terrific.
Thank you. What a moron.
You're going in the wrong direction! You're going to kill somebody!
So, as we just saw there, those guys thought they were fine, and they thought the people who were telling them they were going in the wrong direction were morons, as they put it. You're drunk. You don't know where we're going. They thought they were fine because what they saw, well, they were fine, going down a road and everything's going well. And in fact, as we just saw there near the end, they were heading towards a collision pretty quick. So yeah, we do this. You ever known someone like this? Or have you been that person before? I'm doing fine. Don't tell me otherwise. You know what's interesting is the opposite is also true, and this is perhaps even more common. You guys are familiar with World War II, the somewhat D-Day, the invasion of Normandy? Okay, well, one of the men who participated in that, he recounted a story, a man named Corporal George Ryan. And he said he was with his unit, and he was in a landing carrier off of Omaha Beach. And they're in the water, and they're approaching the beach, and he says there were shells bursting all around them, and they were terrified, because at any moment one of these shells could hit their landing carrier. And somebody in his unit screamed out from the back, "We've got to get off this thing, we're going to get killed." And so his unit started diving into the water and swimming to shore. And Ryan, he said, well, I held back. He said, I wasn't afraid of the bullets as much as I was of the water, because I can't swim. It puts him in an interesting situation. So he's panicking, he starts throwing off all of the equipment he has. And he inflates his life vest, and he starts, according to him, tiptoeing into the water very slowly and cautiously. When suddenly, he said, some German with his machine gun ripped open the side of my landing craft, and it started sinking. And he said, that convinced me. So I dove into the water, and I pushed with all my might, and I started swimming. And he said, I couldn't see anything around me. There was just water and explosions and loud noises and people yelling all around me, and I'm thrashing, and I can't swim. So he's struggling with all of his might to get to shore. And he does this for what feels like an eternity. And all he sees is water splashing around him, and he's like, I can't do this much longer. He's running out of energy. He's getting tired. He can't last much longer. And it occurs to him, he says, I'm going to drown before I ever reach the beach. And he begins to accept his fate, and suddenly he feels a tap on the shoulder. And he said, I looked up, I looked around me, and I saw I'd been swimming in about a foot of water. Right there by the beach. And he said, man, I'm glad they tapped me. You talk about the will to live. If they hadn't stopped me, I would have swum 2 miles inland. And I think this is perhaps one of the most common things we see in this culture. And I know I've experienced it over and over and over again, and I'm pretty certain that we all have here. But so often, our perspective has us convinced with the situation around us that we're drowning. That we're drowning, that this is the end, that life is over, that everything is miserable and terrible, that there's nothing good in this thing. When in fact, everyone around us who's standing looking down on us with the bigger picture, the fuller perspective, can see, you're fine. You're not drowning. Just stand up. Literally, just stand up. I think this happened. Can anyone relate with this? Have you been that person before?
I fell in 20 foot of water and didn't know how to swim.
There we go.
But I survived.
I think we've all been that person before, at least once. Convinced that things are miserable and terrible and awful, and in fact, we're so focused in on what's happening immediately around us, we can't see that we're fine. I know I've been that person, man. It's miserable. It's really, really miserable, because when I allow my perspective to be focused on the immediate, what's happening right around me and nothing else, none of the big picture at all, none of what is good and what is true and what I have to be thankful for and the things around me that are holding me up and supporting me, when I allow myself to be focused on nothing else but the bad stuff right in front of me, man, I'm depressed easily, I'm irritable, I'm selfish, I'm a jerk. And you know what? All of you are too when you get in the same spot. Don't say you aren't. I know some of you. And here's what's so scary about the whole thing. We're so smart and we're so capable that we have convinced ourselves that most of the time that we see the whole picture. When we're in the moment, everything's terrible and it's awful and there's nothing good out of this. And someone says, oh, no, you just need to calm down. There's some good out of this. You say, no, I see the whole picture. There's nothing that I don't see in this. We've convinced ourselves we see it all, but we have the whole perspective. There's another clip I want to show you really quick from a movie called Bruce Almighty. in which Bruce, played by Jim Carrey, he's had a bad day. Things have gone poorly. He didn't get a promotion, and he got mugged, and his car broke down, and he had a bad day, okay? And he is complaining to his wife at the end of the day. So let's go ahead and watch that clip.
Well, thank God you're all right.
God, yeah, let's thank God, shall we? For his blessings are raining down upon me. Wait, that's not rain!
Bruce, please don't do that, honey. You know that everything happens for a reason.
That I don't need. That is a cliche. That is not helpful to me. A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. I have no bird. I have no bush. God has taken my bird and my bush.
Oh, I see. So God is picking on you? Is that what you're saying?
No, he's ignoring me completely. He's far too busy giving Evan everything he wants. Oh, that's great, Sam. But you missed your target. I'm over here.
Don't get mad at the dog. It's not the dog's fault.
No, it's God's fault. I gave him the wrong coordinates.
All right, you know what? Enough. All right, will you just stop being such a martyr?
I am not being a martyr. I'm a victim. God is a mean kid sitting on an anthill with a magnifying glass, and I'm the ant. He could fix my life in 5 minutes if he wanted to, but he'd rather burn off my feelers and watch me squirm.
All right, sweetheart, I know that you're mad. It's completely understandable. What Evan did is slimy and wrong. But this day could have been so much worse. I'm just glad you're okay.
Okay? Newsflash. I'm not okay. I'm not okay with a mediocre job. I'm not okay with a mediocre apartment. I'm not okay with a mediocre life.
So is that what you think that we have? A mediocre life?
Don't make this about you.
About me? How can I make this about me? It's about you. It's always about you.
Perfect. Perfect. I'll have the worst day of my life with a side order of guilt, please.
Scariest part is we think we have the whole picture no matter what anyone else says. I see it all, and it all is terrible. When we do this, we become, well, you saw it, we become like that. We become selfish. Don't make this about you. It's about me. And over and over again, we fall prey to what I call the age-old, arrogant belief of mankind, that once again, we see it all. What I see is all there is. That's it. And that, to the Christian or to the human being in general, is an instant death blow to joy or satisfaction of any kind. And we just finished talking about last week, pride. And that is so related, so closely related to pride. What I see is all there is, and I know best. It doesn't matter what anyone else says, I do know best. And so the bottom line is here, if we're going to be pleasant individuals, if we're going to be good friends, good fathers, good mothers, good spouses, good co-workers, to be functional people, to live out anything like the abundant life that Jesus Christ came to usher us into, we've got to find a way to get the big picture view of our situation, to have a fuller perspective in spite of all the terrible things that are happening around us. In spite of what's going on, in spite of whatever it is, we've got to find a way to have a bigger perspective, even when life gets tough. So how do we do that? How do we do that? Because all of this is easier said than done, isn't it? It's hard when life gets crazy and things get really tough. I'm slowly starting to come out of one of the most difficult periods of my life. And so I can't sit up here and say, you know what, I had the perfect perspective the whole time, because I didn't. It was hard. So how do we do it when things get really hard? I'm going to give you guys 4 points, 4 steps to getting perspective right. 4 steps to having the 10,000-foot view of your life, the big picture view. Ready? Here's number 1, and these are short and they're quick, but they're so important, every single one of them. Number 1, stop and remind yourself that you don't see it all. Stop and remind yourself that you don't have the big picture, that you don't have the whole perspective, especially when you're emotional. Your emotions like to zoom in on what is Well, what makes you emotional, right? That's what emotions do. Especially when you're emotional. You just stop and remind yourself, I don't see it all. I know you think you do. I know I think I do in the moment. But I don't. You don't. We never will. Because we get so busy, caught up living life. We do. We get so busy, caught up living what's right in front of us and doing the job and doing our responsibilities and just doing what is right in front of us that we rarely, if ever, take time to slow down and reflect upon our lives, reflect upon where we're at and what's going on and how we're doing and what we are doing and what we should be doing. We get caught up in the busyness of America. We never slow down. And as a result, we so easily think that we see it all. And we have the whole picture. There's nothing that we're missing. We're going with the flow. And we've got to make it a habit. Not just when times get tough, but actively throughout your life, stop, slow down, and remind yourself that you don't see it all. That you don't have the whole picture. Because there's nothing more detrimental to joy and to satisfaction than never slowing down and being always convinced that you see it all. There's nothing that gives you less hope than going through a hard time and seeing nothing but that hard time. That's what despair is. So that's number one. Stop. Remind yourself that you don't have a perfect perspective. Number two. Surround yourself with people who will help you stay grounded. Surround yourself with people that have a bigger and better perspective than you do and who can help remind you of it. Remember the scene we just watched with planes, trains, and automobiles? Those guys were going in the wrong direction and were on their way to kill themselves. And the people on the other side of the road are saying, hey, stop. You're going in the wrong direction. Stop. They said, moron, you guys are drunk. You don't know where I'm going. We get stuck up in our own heads. We get stuck up in our own routine, in our own heads, and what we know is right and what we think is right. And when we do, our worlds revolve around us. They really do. This is so common in our culture today that we don't even question whether this should happen or not. Our worlds revolve around us, but that was never meant to be the focus or perspective we were meant to have in life. Never. We've got to remember in this, with surrounding ourselves with people who can anchor us to reality, we've got to remember that first point, that we do not know it all. We've got to stop acting like we do. I know so many people, and I'm sure you have too, who have miserable, messed up lives because they refuse to listen to anyone. You know what I'm talking about? They will not listen to anyone because they know what's best. They have the full picture. Okay, I know you think you know what's best for me, but I really do. Yeah. They can't receive advice. They can't receive instruction. When they're in that moment, like Bruce was just a minute ago, Jim Carrey, his character, they're in the moment and things are miserable and terrible. And his wife says, this day could have been so much worse. And she's very right. And he says, don't tell me that. I don't need that. That's not helpful. We have to humble ourselves and listen to the people around us, actively surround ourselves with people, seek out people who are going to be able to sit there with a bigger perspective and say, look, I know things seem terrible, but let me remind you of why they're not as bad as you might think they are. Let me remind you what is true and what is right, so you don't get caught up in what you feel right now. That's number two. We've got to surround ourselves with people who will keep us grounded. I don't know what I'd do without my wife to keep me grounded. So number three, put God back in the picture. Include God in your perspective because it's so easy for us not to. And life is really, it's pretty sad without God in the picture, at least for me. In other words, take a step back and whatever you're dealing with, whether it's something that's making you depressed or angry, some terrible situation here or there, whatever it is, because we do go through hard stuff. Whatever it is, take a step back, calm down, and make an effort to look at the situation through God's eyes for a second. There was a song a few years back that said, Lord, give me your eyes so I can see the world the way you do. And that's really sobering if you do that for just a second. Say, hey, if Jesus Christ were going through what I was going through right now, we're in this situation, what would he care about? What would his perspective be like? Because I guarantee it would be a bigger one than yours. It's very sobering. And most importantly, we have to actively make ourselves remember who God is, what he's like, the fact that he is involved and he cares about us, and remember what he's done for us in the past. I don't know how many times I've been in some terrible situation. I'm depressed and anxious and worried or whatever else, and God has pulled me out of it. He's rescued me. And then a month later, I'm in another terrible situation, and I'm depressed and worried and anxious, and I've forgotten completely about the fact that God literally has saved me over and over and over and over again. I'm like, oh, I'm all alone in this. There's no hope this time. I've forgotten what he's done. With God's people, the Israelites in the Old Testament, he knew that they would forget over and over and over again the things that he had done for them. So he says, look, every time I do something that was a big deal, I want you to build a monument to it. Build a monument, not for my sake, but so you can look at it and remember that I've saved your hides over and over again, so you don't forget.
Preach it.
Because we forget. We just do. The Israelites forgot, and they'd be like, oh, no, we're done. Oh, hey, there's that monument. Remember the last 100 times God saved us? This is what we do. We have to remember that our God is alive, and he is active, and he cares about our lives, and he saved us every other time up till now.
That's right.
Suddenly the things you're freaking out about seem really silly when you put God back in the picture. So that's number 3. Put God back in the picture. Include God in your perspective as if he doesn't deserve that place. And lastly, number 4, and this is a cliche, but listen, hear me out here. Number 4, be an optimist. Find the good side of your situation. And once again, that is a cliche, but it's proven again and again and again that first of all, I don't care how you feel, there's always a good side of your situation. Second of all, it's really, really effective to actually focus on the good instead of the bad, believe it or not. It just is. If you have a perspective that's focused on things that have you messed up, if your perspective's messing with you, if it's depressing you, if it's making you angry or anxious or whatever it's messing with you, change your perspective. Like, change it. Think about something else. Perhaps the most effective way, in my opinion, to do this is to find something to be thankful for. I don't mean you have to drum something up. I mean just take a second to think about just one of the many, many, many things in your life you have to be grateful for. Because I don't care who you are, you have a lot. If you're sitting here alive in this room, fed and clothed, you have a lot to be thankful for.
That's right.
I've gone through, whatever bad situations I've had in my life, and there's never been one instance in which I haven't had way more to be more grateful for about than what I had to complain about. There's nothing that dispels a small perspective, nothing that dispels depression or whatever it is, than reminding yourself of what you have to be grateful for, than maintaining a grateful spirit. Abraham Lincoln put it like this. He said, we can complain because rose bushes have thorns, or we can rejoice because thorn bushes have roses.
Right.
You're looking at the same situation, it's a matter of how you're looking at it. And that is how it is for us, guys. That's how it works. The Apostle Paul in Philippians figured this thing out. That guy, I don't know if you know anything about his life, he went through a lot of hard stuff. He was shipwrecked, and then he made it to shore, and then he got bit by a poisonous snake, and then he was imprisoned over and over again, and beaten until he was left dead, and a lot of stuff. Eventually, he was just martyred. In talking to his close friends at the church of the Philippians, he wrote this. He said, I have learned in whatever situation I am in to be content. I know how to be brought low. I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, I've learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. Because this was a guy who, despite going through a life that was a lot harder than most of us will ever get close to experiencing. Here's a guy who learned how to maintain a perspective that included God in the picture, a 10,000-foot view of his life that kept him walking in joy despite his circumstances. And so that is just, if we can learn how to do that, guys, my money back guarantee, and I can't give you any money back because you didn't give me any, so. My money back guarantee is that this will have a massive effect on your lives if you can learn how to do this. So number one, stop and remind yourself that you don't know it all, that you don't see it all. Number two, surround yourselves with people who are going to keep you anchored and grounded to reality, who are going to be able to point out the big perspective. Number three, include your God in the picture. Remember who he is and that he is active and involved, and remember what he's done for you in the past. And lastly, find the good side of what you're going through. If you're depressed and angry, find something to be not depressed and not angry about. Live out the opposite spirit of what you're feeling. We start doing these things, we're going to see a difference really, really quick. So I'm going to pray as the band comes up. But what's so cool is the big picture is, once again, that we have a God who is so involved and cares so much about us that he sent his son, Jesus Christ, to pull us out of the garbage that we admired ourselves in. Amen. That is the gospel. And if you're sitting here today and you've never experienced a relationship with Jesus Christ, I would encourage you to start today. Because it's not only something that's going to be beneficial for you, but this is what you were created to do. You're never going to live out your intended purpose or design, ever going to be able to experience the kind of life that God created you to live until you start walking in a saving relationship with Jesus Christ. So I'm going to pray and close this out. Father, thank you so much for this day. Thank you so much that we can sit here and hear about what is true and what is good. Thank you that we don't have to be locked into looking at the hard things only, locked into a small perspective always, but we can have a bigger perspective. We can include you in our perspective, and that can free us. And for those of us who are hearing this kind of thing for the first time, Father, I pray that you would stir us to action, to start walking in the direction of a relationship with you, Lord. We love you, Father. Amen. We're going to have the band play one last song here, and we're going to have some of our leaders up here at the front. And if you have anything you want prayer for at all, whether you just took steps in making Jesus Christ your Savior and walking in relationship with him, or whether you have anything else you're struggling with or dealing with and want prayer for, please feel free to come forward, and we'd love to pray for you.